Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the ROI from AI podcast, where we talk about everything to do with AI adoption and SMEs. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lai.
And I'm Amir Nissen. And on this podcast, we go beyond the hype and we talk with leaders and innovators who are driving real business results with AI. Today, we've got two very special guests, Annette and Andrew Ballard, who I'm going to call AB to not confuse you with the host, Andrew. And these are special guests because not only do they got their own AI startups, but they're also alumni of our AI Pathfinder program. So I'll kick it over to Annette if you'd like, and if you could introduce yourself and the startup you're working on.
The founder of a small two-person team called Spatiotemporal. That's, of course, Latin for space-time. So we're playing with things that move is our main tool on the basis that understanding how things move is what keeps people safe. And that translates into the future that we're working towards, self-driving cars, and the day that you have your personal robot in your house having to react and move around you and be as human as it can be. So it's a, valued part of your house. So we're working towards making the physical AI world feel like it belongs as opposed to those things that you don't touch.
So my business is AI. I do a lot of accessibility innovations and just recently built a platform for small to medium NDIS providers.
So I love the ambition of what you're both working on. I'll start with perhaps a tongue-in-cheek question. Are either of you considering moving out of the country for your startups, given the potential impending CGT tax?
Not just yet. Tickets aren't booked. So no. Look, it's interesting and it is coming down the pipeline. I'll be watching it, but that's not a concern at this point in time. There's a lot of things on the to-do list that are higher level, things to be worried about than that one just yet. That would be an excellent problem to have, but that's off into the distant future.
Yeah, pretty much the same here. The only thing that would probably make me move is the NDIS changes, not so much the CGT, because I've got a young man with very complex disabilities. So, but this is a great thing about AI, and it's a lot of the innovations that I'm working on are around that too.
Okay, cool. So that was a really cool intro. And I guess I wanted to go a little bit deeper and find out a little bit more about what each of you do. I know that happens at a high level, but perhaps you could, give examples of what your innovation does and then how it helps individuals. And maybe if there's a highlight use case, that would be fantastic. So Annette first.
Sure. I've actually written 5 million lines of code in the last year. I'm an autistic founder, and when I get interested in something, I really get interested. I've literally spent the last 18 months just non-stop working. And my original driver is my young man who's 21. His name's Axel, which is why I ended up with AI. And he's got very, very complex needs, and he cannot communicate in a normal sense. And he became extremely unwell, and nobody could work out why. He became really quite violent, and he's normally a beautiful, peaceful young man. And the doctors couldn't work out why. I ended up uploading all of his data, and I had, I am a programmer from way back, so I already had an app going, and I loaded all his data into AI, and it flagged porphyria, this rare disorder, and it ended up he got tested, and his coproporphirins were very, very, very high. It wasn't actually porphyria; it was something even rarer, but we got him back to normal after 18 months or so of being really unwell. And I just, realized there's this huge gap, with and what AI could do in this space. So that really sent me down a rabbit hole there. And I'm working on quite a few different things, but with that particular thing, I needed a way to be able to make complex decisions, because when you're working with this sort of stuff, you can't just use a normal large language model to give you an answer, because there isn't one answer. There's all different sorts of perspectives. If we have something which is, a dangerous situation, there's a worker's perspective, there's his perspective, there's all sorts of things. So I came up with a multi-framework reasoning engine that I've developed that is the heart of what this product I'm calling Savanax, and it basically makes all the complex decisions and decides when to escalate to a human. But the idea behind it is it's got like 23 branches, and rather than just give an answer, it gives all the perspectives so that the human reviewer can analyze it, and it also generates policies to help with the automation. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I've just recently launched is this DSX platform, and the idea there is we've already got over 30 members, is to bring in more and more providers and registered providers, because there's a lot of problems with the NDIS with, not knowing who's shonky, and I've certainly dealt with all sorts of situations. And so the idea is really for the members in this cooperative to weed out the bad and really promote the good, so people know where to go. But at the same time, we want to bring in participants and families and create a bit of an innovation hub, because this has certainly helped me. A lot of the people within DSX have been sort of integral for me getting AI going and really feeling confident about what I'm doing.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's very compelling, and that sounds absolutely wonderful what you're doing in AI there. Hey, B, your turn.
Cheers, Andrew. Yeah, by all means. It's part of a sort of things that you don't know that you actually know. So my daily ride is actually 2 wheels, not 4. So being on a motorbike for a long ride up to the workplace has doing the things that teach you that you didn't realize that you already do. And that was the start of this lesson, that it's the 2-ton car next to you that's going to be the thing that might hurt you on a bike, as opposed to, your own problems. So what that meant is that actually motion is a first-class signal of things that can keep people safe. And once you realize that, and especially where you are, your own crumple zone, your own crash test dummy, you do watch out for things a lot more. And I found myself on the highway looking at other cars and doing the thing which I think we all do, but we don't realize we do it. And that is you assess other cars. That car looks competent. That one looks like they're on cruise control. That car, I bet that car is going to, yep, there it goes. It just entered my lane. And humans can do that without thinking. It's something we actually learn as children. I think when we're in prep and preschool, we kind of have to walk behind our parents when we're walking down a busy street, just stay behind me, kids. I'll get you through this crowd. But at some stage in our early years, 5 to 10, we can scoot ahead. We can read the road. We can read people on streets, and we know how to, when someone's going to yield, or when there's a gap. These are all things that humans find incredibly easy, to the point that we actually never talk about it. When you learn to ride a bike again at middle age or beyond, you sort of realize that you need to relearn a few parts of your brain about, distance, braking, bad decisions, good decisions, those sort of things. But until then, you never have to think about that part of thinking ever again. What that's turned into is that motion is the signal that actually is one of the human instincts that we learn as a young child. And it's the thing that's gotten us four and everyone here right now. We've, probably have a few broken bones or a few bad, cuts and bruises, but that's been the worst of it. But when you translate that to what's coming down the path, self-driving cars, robots, they won't have that. Indeed, to be a robot is to be, to be awkward, stilted. There are excellent signs in the last few months of things that are mimicking human movement. But in all the demos that I'm seeing, I'm still seeing very pristine labs. I'm seeing 2 robots make a bed. I'm seeing a robot clean up your lounge room, which is phenomenal. Stack a dishwasher, love it. Just last week, we had a robot from a figure do 200 hours. Granted, a few robots are taking turns to go and recharge, but doing human-like parcel sorting. And the insight was phenomenal. It was like a jaw-drop moment. But in all those cases, there's no humans and robots next to each other. When a human and walks down a hallway, other humans give them room. They can see there isn't room. All those things need to be learnt, and we've built a series of models underneath that actually use those basic the motion to actually figure out just those things that humans can figure out in just a split second. So it's not a large language model. It's not an image model. It's a large spatiotemporal model. And within a few ticks, a few frames, we can figure out whether that person or the robot or the car is yielding, is still moving, all the things that a human can do really well, but that we now need to give to our metal friends. So that's the path we're on. It's shown to be wonderful in the data science, is holding up firm, but that human story of the things that we find easy that our plastic friends will find hard is the real story of things that we can see are vitally needed in these sort of tech stacks that we've been able to solve quite well.
Great. I really I got a good spread today, and both of you are working on your own models. I'm curious, how much do you rely on the sort of general LLM models and the frontier models, the codexes and the Claude codes? Opus 4.8 came out today. How much do those play a role in your workflows?
That's totally 100%. You can't compete against it now. My biggest bottleneck up until recently was the user testing, because obviously you get to a stage and you have to test it, and it's just like the worst job imaginable for any programmer. But we've got Claude in Chrome now, which came out a few months back, I think. And the whole cycle is just nailed. And yeah, I see 4.8 is out there. I've already used it this morning in Claude Chrome. I asked it to do some penetration testing. It's like, I don't know, this is your site. So I had to stick it in dev. It was just refusing to touch the site. But yeah, really like 100% here.
And I'm the same. I'm 100% or more than 100% if that's possible. I've done more coding in the last 3 months than I have last year, that I have in, I'll say it quietly, 30 years of being in this field. Or I have done more coding, or coding has been done. I'm not sure, mistakes were made in that passive voice. My normal way is that even 12 months ago, I would be doing the LLMs as my cognitive buddy, so a sparring partner. I wouldn't just say, hey, do this. It would be, let's talk this through, let's think about this, let's find ways, what's everyone else doing, what are the challenges? So actually talking through the problem, to the point that I'm actually, back on the motorbike, I'm actually quite famous for coding while I'm riding. So I know that's super, super scary, but it's solving the problem again. The fact that I know the highway that I ride so well, and I'm here with all fingers and toes, so it's worked well so far, touch wood, that it is something you can do while you're riding with speakers and microphone in your helmet. I am actually able to code because seeing the code is the least important part of coding. My blind spot is actually testing. Annette, I think you said the same thing, but it's, if I had to write test cases for everything, I'd probably not do the project in the first place. But whereas prompt engineering, turned into the end of the prompt is, would you like help with that? Now it's, would you like me to write some test cases for that? And my answer is always yes. And if you can think of another dozen more, knock yourself out. To the point that everything that I do that I talk through with data or a new feature, it'll say, would you like me to run the test? Yes, I'd like you to run all the test cases, please. And that might take a few ticks, but it'll say, yep, there's an issue with this and that. And I've got to say that coding at this pace, coding in voice language, waiting for someone to have a think and then come back, is actually a pretty perfect pace to do it at. If we can all recall when LLMs were, you'd ask a prompt and you'd see the lines of text come across the page, you could, scroll past it and keep up with that. Those days are long gone. We've now gone to, multiple streams in the background working on multiple parts of your code. But to ground that's good. You always look at it, test it, check it out, scan and have a think about it. It's not deployed straight to prod, but at the same time, it's getting eyes on from so many angles that, you're just there trying to drive the code as opposed to write the code. You don't have to read code, but if you understand what it's doing and if it does try and do something wildly crazy that, that's not possible, I think you're just testing if 1 = 1, then pass. But so some background latent knowledge to be able to ask it curly questions. But once there's a level of trust, and once you build on that trust and on the trust and on the trust, you go from simple trust questions to, okay, this brand new feature that you can do. Last weekend, I did a whole new simulation world where I had this pesky human could drive a pesky human on screen, and 4 robots were in a virtual world doing menial tasks. I was quite like the robots doing the package sorting. I did something not dissimilar, but I knocked that out in about 6 hours. And, I hazard to think how long that would have taken me if I had have done it in a different way, to the point that I use Codex. Codex that I'm using right now has that 5-hour window. I can really only code for 1 hour out of 5 hours because I hit the limit. It literally does force me to then go back into other tools for cognitive rethinking it and then wait for the timer and then cool, I can do another hour of coding. It's that sort of pace. Yes, I should insert more credits here, and the token wars and the token monetization is a thing, but it's almost like a go outside tax, go and mow the lawn, go for a ride, have a think, or go do some more planning, or how's this going to impact other things? It's almost a perfect ratio of coding to, go outside and turn the screen off for a second, please.
That's amazing that It sounds like the new models have enabled both of you to code a lot faster and perhaps a lot more than you ever did. And Annette, I'm really impressed by your metric of 5 million lines of code in the past year. I just can't imagine that. That just blows my mind. I guess I've got two questions to just hone in on with regards to the technical side of it. And I know, Andrew, you had mentioned using Codex as well, but I guess I was interested from both of your perspectives. What other tools are you considering using? Because obviously Claude has got limit problems. AB, you mentioned Codex, you're hitting the limit within 1 hour. Are there other tools that the two of you are starting to use because you're hitting that limit? And then I suppose second to that, and AB, you touched on it, and Annette, with 5 million lines of code, I imagine it's quite difficult to review. How robust are you finding it all? Are you thinking that, the AI is going to be doing the secondary checks, or are you still looking at it yourself? Are you finding heaps of flaws? I guess I'm just really interested because AI's got the reputation of being able to do great minimum viable products. But in a way, a lot of people are questioning whether or not it should go into production, whether or not it's production ready. So I wanted to go down this technical pathway and ask both of you. So yeah, number one, your tools and what you're considering using in the future. And number two, perhaps the process that you're using and how robust the code is.
Sorry, I use totally 100% Claude all the way through, but you talk about when I first started doing this, I produced stuff and it didn't look anything like I planned it. It's all methodology. I've got a very, very extensive document now of methodology, which covers everything from scoured the information security manual through to privacy legislation, everything, standards, everything's within there, and everything I've learned. I've even been through that. A reason why I know I've got 5 million lines of code is because I scoured through it and pulled out all problems. So, I have a whole methodology I run through, and it's continuous review. There's actually studies behind this that we know, and it's part of this idea that if you get AI to produce a document like a Deloitte's report, probably shouldn't throw that in. There's a thing about a Deloitte's report that sorry, it's cutting in and out, full of errors. And this is a problem. People talk about AI hallucinating, but would you give your assistant a job and then say, "Oh, it's done. I can submit this report"? No, you wouldn't. You'd check it. And you check it again. And the thing is, you work out pretty quickly with AI, if you're using it extensively, is the more times you get a review on it, the more times it finds error. It finds errors, but with each iteration, those errors become less and less till, I'll use Gemini as well. And I actually do use Gemini and OpenAI as well, particularly in the design phase, spinning it back and forth. And I'll do like 100 iterations of a design of a specification until I'm ready to actually give it to Claude Code. And then when I get into Claude Code, I still keep Claude Chat going. You've got different levels of AI. So I'll give it like sprints. I've got a whole process worked out. So now I can produce a platform very fast and it looks exactly like I planned, and it's, pretty bulletproof. Yeah. So all methodology.
I'm not dissimilar by all means. I think the biggest tech that I'm looking forward to that is possible, and in 6 months and every 6 months after that is brilliant, is local models. 12 months ago, you were back in GPT-2 level of you could read faster, go and get a coffee and come back, and also the context windows were small enough, so it wasn't very useful. Local models have just hit that point where they've gone from, you can ask it simple questions, get simple answers back, to you trust it for smaller bytes and then medium-sized bytes and increasingly bigger bytes. So that's what I'm looking forward to the point that I'll, go down the path of a fast Mac for everything that's non-CUDA related. And then I need to splash the card around a little bit and get a DJX, a sub $10,000 breakout box that, is, I think, 2 chips of Grace Blackwell. Anyway, it's one of the almost gold-plated or gold-painted anyway, local GPU that's got enough power to do those types of tasks. In 6 months' time, that'll be even easier. I think frontier models are still where you go for long-term conversations. I've got to say I'm OpenAI all the way, almost. ChatGPT for conversations and Codex for coding. But that's mostly because of the sunk cost. I've got 2 years of text chats and voice chats and context and sources to the point that hallucination is not really a problem in the space I'm playing with. I'm more the other way. I actually have to prune my own sources to say if I've had a breakthrough a few months ago, then I need to actually trim some of the 2 months ago, not chats, but documentation or rich sources to draw on. Because if I can pivot fast like that, I don't want it hanging on to those memories of, yes, but 2 years ago you said this. It's like, no, that's old thinking. Remember, we had that chat last week. So I'd love it when the frontier models can do that. Well, when we sleep overnight, we're meant to prune our thoughts and memories to have that same mode. But local is great for and increasingly good for doing the task that would have been, we dreamt of 12 months ago, 24 months ago, and now it's hitting that ramp up point where it's becoming awesome. But as for actual tooling, yeah, I don't mind when one gets better by 1%. I do use Claude every now and then to fact check and double check that what's the sycophantic? I'm making sure I'm not saying yes to everything or being brutally honest and, saying no to things. So it's nice to get a second point of view, but also real humans are good to get second points of view too. So, yeah.
Definitely. Question more specifically for Annette. So I am curious with the story you've shared, how the medical community has reacted. Like my understanding is that there's been some studies that show that AI is actually better at diagnosis in various medical fields, but that's not something that I imagine the medical community is wholly accepting yet. And obviously, you wouldn't just trust the AI, but I am curious how the experience has been sort of navigating that pathway with the medical community. Have they been open to the things that you've unearthed with AI? Is it something that you continue battling with, or are the ones who are who you deal with on a regular basis? Yeah, how's that experience been?
So I guess from where I'm standing, I'm looking at people with very complex disabilities. So I recently was a pitch finalist in Melbourne, the Startup Network, and La Trobe Uni was there, and one of their AI professors, not very good at people's names, I can't think of her name, but off the top of my head, but she was also, as well as being an AI technologist, she was also a doctor, and her response about it was, doctors need this now. Because when you come across someone like my son, they can take up enormous amounts of time and, there's obviously cost, but the death mortality rates are through the roof and it's very hard to diagnose. So it really, in a lot of ways, can only be done with data and AI. It is extremely difficult. My original idea with this was to solve my problem, for my own son, and he's like the original pilot because the amount of work, I'm looking at 1,000 emails a month just in regards to his care, let alone communicating to support coordinators, to speech therapists, OT, the NDIS. It's all that interaction, and the health side of it's just, one point, and obviously a very important point. But yeah, it's really the only option. There's so many people out there who've got, his condition caused, these terrible severe behaviours. He did in the order of $50,000 of damage to the home during this period and hurt people. And it literally, when I got to the bottom of it and realised it was his coproporphirin levels, and then I could go back to AI and say, well, what can we do here? And then took all this to the doctor, and we obviously did the testing first, and then took the research back to the doctors, and we honed in on sulfurophane, a phytochemical. It fixed it in 48 hours. This had been going on for months and, 18 months on and off. And that's 6 months ago now. So I just don't think there's any alternative but AI. It's like it's a huge blessing for people like my son. Huge.
Yeah, that's very impactful, Annette, and thank you for sharing that. And guess I'm wondering, and this touches and perhaps draws on Amir's question a little bit, and this goes to both of you, so perhaps Annette first and then AB. What do you end up discussing AI with, perhaps other stakeholders? So in your case, Annette, other doctors and, perhaps other carers. And then AB, you're meeting with other companies and you're telling them that you're developing this with AI.
This integration was heavily publicised on LinkedIn, and I've got a big network of people, supporters on there who are helping me. Like, these are providers and mums and all sorts of people from that disability space, because you end up, of course, in a bubble of like-minded people on these, on social media. And so by the time that AI actually resolved the problem, even though, you would see people sharing a lot about it, I think anyone who's in mine, or my son's got his own, he's got his own LinkedIn profile now, Axel AI assisted, and he's quite infamous. He's got a bit of a sense of humour. So, all this data has ended up not just helping resolve these problems, it's actually created a whole voice for him when he is a voiceless person. He's got one post up there. Sorry, just cut out again. The AI, of course, knows his whole story and has got his personality down pat. Within 24 hours, he's got over 200 reactions on one of his posts. He's quite well known. So everybody in my network is like, yeah, they get it. They really get it. They saw the miraculous turnaround. Yeah, it's probably just how it's ended up like that, because it was a very, very bad situation that we went through. But yeah, we use it. I have an avatar I use for him as well, and he does his own songs and all sorts of stuff. So he's within his own right has ended up a huge AI advocate. It's very cool.
It's really good to see all the positive feelings that you've gotten from the community. So that's really interesting. And, AB, obviously what you're working on is just totally different. And I think it's great to have this variety. So yeah, interested in hearing what the reactions are to your stakeholders in terms of AI.
Yeah, look, there's no problem there at all. In fact, the opposite's probably true. It doesn't matter how the cake's made. What's the old thought experiment? No one asked J.R.R. Tolkien or J.K. Rowling what typewriter they used. The tools are neat and it is a discussion, but they're changing so fast. That's really not the topic that's the real thing. I mean, there's the thing and there's the tools to build the thing. No. The nice thing too is that there's no sort of anti-AI in this field either. Probably the biggest thing I'm finding is energy conversations. That sort of a thread is probably one that is probably the first one that comes up in my face. But the great news is that the tools that I'm building are, 1 million times smaller than some of the other tools out there. So I can train our model, which is a large model, yet I can train it overnight, do a fresh copy. It's so small, it can run on your phone, it can almost run on your glasses. It's that kind of scale. So I've always got the prepared rebuttal for the obvious, yes, but aren't you burning the oceans and yada, yada. It's like, no. In actual fact, I can almost fly the, little old guy down in Victoria, trying to solve the world's problems almost single-handedly, but doing it on, a half a shekel compared to the millions and billions that the others are doing around the world. So our story is small is not because of, it actually is that small in this regard is in fact the way the science is heading. Small bespoke things can actually solve massive problems, as opposed to if I throw billions and spend billions, I'm sure I'll solve it. But ironically, we're finding small and bespoke is actually the way forward. So sort of leaning in with everything we've got, rapidly iterating and building as fast as we possibly can. But yeah, no, there's neither any pro or anti. It really is just, what the output is, what the benefits are, and, trying to actually tell the story that is probably known but untold before. So more those sort of issues than pro or not pro this sort of field.
Very cool, very cool. And I'm curious to hear from both of you what is the sort of next major milestones coming up, maybe the next 6 to 12 months, and what do you see as the biggest obstacle to achieving those milestones?
Happy to pitch in. By all means, yeah, we're doing a sprint right now. It really is every other waking hour. I still have a day job, which is awesome, but this is the thing that is, half the world is moving towards. Granted, it's hard when your feed is tuned well and all that you see and hear is people talking about the things that you're, so mad keen to talk about. So it's a bit of self-bias there, which I'm aware of and self-aware enough to know. But at the same time, this is an idea that is timely and gathering a lot of attention and eyeballs. So in this regard, it really is going to be a sprint. The question I get asked by VCs and angels and things like that, we're having excellent conversations, but the question is, yes, but what's stopping someone from coming behind you? And I'm playing with the biggest companies in the world with the most cashed up ever. So it was fun during the time we spent together doing the startup training sessions. You're asking, so what's your perfect customer? A 53-year-old man living in, no. My perfect customer is Apple, Google, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Anthropic. It's like, oh, that's not quite what I meant, but interesting. Ironically, it's playing a large game. So being fast, being at the right place at the right time is vital. And the Aussie battler mentality is nice and it flies well here. But that doesn't cut any mustard once I broaden my wings. So for us, it's getting to scale and letting the science actually show that the science is doing what it's doing. The marketing and the story and the influencing the field can follow that, but definitely making sure that the science leads that story. So for us, it really is a sprint. By the end of this year and every 6 months, we'll know whether that is still correct, whether we're onto the right thing, keep on going, go faster, or right, it was a neat thing to look at, but in actual fact, there's a better thing that someone else is working on that, does that supersede? Does that halt what we're doing, or do we have to fit in with that? So it's not go fast and break things, but it absolutely is go fast.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm working on at the moment is looking to bring AI accelerated development skills to other autistic people on scale. So I've got a plan for that. So I'm fishing around for interest in collaborating on that at the moment, and I have a plan, and there's some large grants coming up that I hope to be successful with, and create some more opportunities, because autistic employment is 6 times the normal. People have got no idea. It's really bad. Underemployed, not employed, and yet the skills out there and the innovation that come from autistic people is quite astounding, and that's what's going to be important in the future. It's not, can I turn up to an office under bright lights and tolerate, an inaccessible space for 8 hours a day? That's not going to be important anymore. Or can I, talk to all these people and remember what their names are and make eye contact? No, that's not going to be important. What's going to be important is, do you have innovative ideas and can you use AI? So
that's really good to hear about what the two of you have planned for the future. And I like the terminology that Amir uses, your milestones, which is very, very much according to the program that he had run. So with regards to the program, I guess I was just interested in finding out your thoughts on it and whether or not you found it helpful or not helpful. What were potentially some of the benefits that you found by being in a cohort and having Amir running it? So perhaps Annette first and then AB.
Sure. It was actually a really good program. I really liked the way it was run in terms of all the breakout rooms that happened all the time. I normally would go into a situation like that and listen and never meet anybody, but I networked with heaps of people very fast. It was like speed networking. It was really good. And the idea of minimal viable product and getting it to market. And I think Amir said in there a quote from the LinkedIn founder about if there's still bugs in it, you've left it too late. And that would ordinarily be me, is adding bits and pieces and, continually increasing it and making sure there was no detectable bug. And now it's like, no, focus. Let's get this thing operational. What are we here to achieve? Let's focus on those things. So that was very good for me. I really, really found it useful, sort of stuff that you won't get in a university course or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I'd second that. The programs, 2 of them, but I did the first one, which was fantastic. That was my own effort. And then you kind of asked me, would you kind of sit in on the second one and I guess play an old wise soul to, help from the sidelines. But the 2 of them were the perfect place to be. Essentially, I had done those sort of programs in a startup 15, 20 years ago, which was good. So this was sort of the getting back into the swing of it and just being reminded of the things of, yes, if you're not, if it works perfectly, you've waited too long to release it. I was in stealth at that point in time, which is fine, but it was really, really awesome to have those breakout rooms and actually have those chats. You have 1 minute to convey everything you want to say, or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So being able to, quickly tailor your pitch on the fly was vital. I am embarrassed by the early pitches, this is going to, solve the planet, solve world peace and yada, yada. It's like, well, hang on. Yeah, great. But how do you get that message across in, 10 words, 5 words, what line works, and doing that repetitively? You're right. It's like speed networking, which was phenomenal, but you really do know what lands when you see the, I don't get it versus the, so it's not X for Y, but do you tell the origin story? Do you tell a personal story? Do you tell a tech story? Or do you have a guess and then guess wrong and then quickly pivot when you realize you need to tell the other story because that's what, that's what that person needs to hear. So the practicals was fantastic, but but those, those rooms to just have those chats to so many people and also hear their stories too, which was really good. That was the 2024 for me was the sort of the growth of LLMs as a useful cognitive tool, and hearing people thinking and, planning on what was possible and, that sort of thing. So having those chats with real people while also having those chats with your favorite tool and your voice in your ear was, vital to sort of get, how do I say this better? And then the next week having those conversations and seeing whether it lands better. So feedback was fantastic.
Great. That's great to hear. And I have, most people who take the program, the vast majority of people say it's the breakout rooms, it's the meeting the other founders, it's the quick sessions and the quick feedback. So I have come to terms with the fact that that is the best part of the program, and not my wise words, but that's okay. And
so I should have started with that. I mean, of course.
No. And look, I think it's reflective of startups are really hard, and the entrepreneurship journey is one of the most difficult things you can do in a business sense, at least. And it's not something that is common amongst the people So having a space where you can meet other founders, especially other founders working on AI startups as well. Not only do you share learnings and share insights and tips and tools and tricks, but you also get that the empathy and the understanding and the yes, I know what you're going through, and I know it's hard, and the support. So that is absolutely the best part of the program, and it's always about the people, and having been through similar programs myself, I agree. It's like it's the people you meet through it is the number one thing. So yeah, we are almost up on time. So maybe if you have some final words, if you'd like to give yourselves a plug or a shout out or a call to action, as with any good pitch, you got to finish with an ask. So we'll leave it to you for your final words, thoughts, and any asks you have.
Annette, AXAI, look me up, axai.com.au. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. And sorry, I got my cat lying on the network cable. And if anyone's looking to, invest or wants to collaborate on employment for autistic people, look me up. I'm very, very passionate about it.
And for myself, no great ask, no great plug. I don't think everybody in the world needs to buy a motion foundation model for their robot. The good news is this will happen one day, whether it's via us or via someone else. It's the kind of thing that will just happen. The joy is we're early, we're trying to lead the field. So LinkedIn is a great place to connect. Love to chat with anyone who is playing in that space of self-driving cars, robots, thinking in behavioral terms as well as technical terms. But yeah, our conversations here are thinking of the future that needs to be in your kitchen soon. I'll leave you with a thought that when your robot is cutting up veggies for your dinner that night, which will happen one day, it's chopping away with a chopping knife. Do you work in and around it? Like I could invite any of you over to dinner and ask you, here's a carrot, can you please chop that? And, not live in fear of being able to visit the hospital 10 minutes later. Or do you clear the kitchen when there's a robot with a knife? Right now, I think you'd kind of clear the kitchen. We're trying to think of that future when robots are potentially going to be part of the family. We're using every sci-fi trope, every good sci-fi trope, not the bad sci-fi tropes. yes, rule number one is our project is not called Skynet. That's okay. But no, love to connect with anybody who's in the space, research, who wants to think about what that future might look like. Happy to help shape it. Cheers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, AB and Annette. I have to admit, the thought of a robot with a knife was a little bit scary, but I'm very much sold on that. And Annette, I really love the work that you're doing and how AI is really helping yourself, your community, and the wider industry. So, look, thank you again. If anyone's interested in reaching out to AB and Annette, just read the description that we've provided in the ROI from AI episode. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you again on ROI.
Thanks, everybody.